Good to see you, Richard, David, Paul, and the rest. We're going to begin with some prayers as usual. Karen's also here. They're back from Ohio, so that was probably a dangerous ordeal. Sangye churang chodam la badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi she gipe songnam ki drola penche sangye rupa sho. I said dagi chushe. You should say dagi chunyen. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye churang soki chognam la, changshu badu dagni kyapsu chi, dagi chunyen gipe sognam ki, dola penche sangye drupa sho. And then to offer a short mandala. Sashipoki Chukshing Meto Tramri Rablingji Nide Genpadi Sangye Jingdu Mikte uagi Drokunam dak shingla chuparsho Jesun Lama Dampa Kenam Kichuku Kala Kense Chuzintik Chitar Sampe Dulces in Mala Sabge Chuki Charpa Abdu so. I've recited them in Tibetan as requested by some members in our last class, but you know the meanings. Requesting, having offered the mandala, we request our holy gurus. I think it's plural, as it says. I don't have the actual Tibetan, I just have the phonetics in front of me. Jesun Lama Damba Ke Nam Ki. I think the Nam is the plural particle there. So in the English translation, when it says, "Oh, holy and perfect pure Lama," should be lamas, unless I'm mistaken. From the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of us to be trained. So thinking that way, having requested that, you can imagine that the teachings that are about to be given are inspired by our gurus through the mouthpiece of this imperfect monk. Idam Guru Radna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, good to see you. Yeah. So we can use a little bit of meditation. So let's try to set, having already created motivation. Sometimes in teachings, that's all that is done. Sometimes at the monasteries, even that is extremely abbreviated when one is just studying a text or something. But usually we like to at least do the prayers. But now we're going to try to set it in a more extensive way through meditation. So relax your body and your mind. place your attention, first of all, on the respiration. Once you recognize it, then place your mindfulness upon it. Just noting whether it's an inhalation or an exhalation. And whether it's long or short. Make sure you exercise or implement, let's say, the mental factor of introspection, like a mental spy that's watching whether your mind is wandering from the respiration. It takes some of your mental energy. That's why at the end, just before attaining full-fledged shamatha or shine, tranquil abiding, one abides in a state of equanimity where one no longer needs that introspection. Right now, we need it. for our purposes, this mindfulness of the breathing, of the respiration, is mainly to subdue the continuity of distracting thoughts. By focusing on this neutral object, this respiration. Now, if you've had a little success, turn your attention now to the mental consciousness. Let go of the mindfulness of the breathing. Hunker down, if you like, in the heart chakra, imagining withdrawing your attention from the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body consciousnesses. Just look at your mental consciousness, be aware of it. You're looking at it with a mental consciousness, so that it's not a case of self-cognition or self-knowing. It's one instance of consciousness knowing a previous instant of consciousness. What's going on in your mind? Is there a continuity of distress or elation? Thoughts of the past, the present, the future? An identifiable affliction, mental factor? All of these events are more easily identifiable than the actual substratum within which they're arising, which is the mind itself, the mental consciousness. So defocusing on the contents, the events of the mind, refocusing on the substratum within which they're arising, getting a mental image of it, developing a mental image of it as though it were like space, not offering any resistance to the emergence of mental events, arising of them out of the consciousness, content, and not offering any resistance to that content, whether it be just memories and so forth, or actual afflictions, offering no resistance to them being absorbed back into the consciousness. The conventional clear light nature of the mind, which is understood to be what's also called the developmental Buddha nature. There are two Buddha natures. There's a non-abiding Buddha nature, I can't remember exactly the name, which refers to the ultimate nature of the mind, its emptiness. Usually that's what we think of as Buddha nature. But here, the conventional Buddha nature is its analog conventionally. This nature of the mind, which offers no resistance to the events of consciousness, mental consciousness. This means we can become better we can let go of our self-pity, our anger, our attachment, our jealousy, even our ignorance. Ignorance not being just a not knowing of something, but the actual wrong engagement of wisdom. We can let go of those and develop states of mind that we may already have. We can enhance them. We can develop states of mind that we could only imagine or wish for in the future through familiarity with them. Familiarity that's born from constant, repeated generating those thoughts like bodhicitta and love and compassion. And then when we're familiar with it, holding our mind on that single-pointedly, which is the sort of quintessential element of meditation, familiarizing the mind with a wholesome object. Like the difference between just touching your hand to the sand on the beach, just leaving a just trace of your handprint, to actually pressing it down firmly in there and leaving a deep imprint in the mind. This quality of mind we have, and if we recognize it, we can feel some joy because we can change. We can change our attitude. And the fact that we can recognize this right now is due to this auspicious moment that we're experiencing as a human being with the 8 freedoms, the 10 endowments, the life of leisure and endowment that the Buddha called an auspicious moment. So relatively rare, where we can see things clearly for a moment if we turn our mind toward it. Sometimes we're overcome by our own habits and so forth. But like on a dark, rainy evening or cloudy evening, where you can barely make out the outlines of what's around you, a stroke of lightning illuminating everything around you. Just for an instant, everything is so clear. Wouldn't it be wonderful if it could remain like that? We have this moment right now that is short-lived in the sense of maybe at the most 100 and some years. For many of us, less than that, is incredibly meaningful. It has great significance what we can do with it. Yet it is passing away with every instant. Every instant we are getting closer to the moment of death. And to find another life like this in the future is very difficult. It's such a life of leisure and endowment is very rare, difficult to create the causes of. Causes mainly being morality, charity, and the other perfections, as well as prayers, strong aspiration. But just recognizing that this is a special opportunity, we have to then educate ourselves from what the Buddha said. What's the purpose? What purpose can we use this for? Not simply to become powerful or popular or to abide in a state of constant happiness, like the long-lived gods. We can use this life of leisure and endowment to overcome our afflictions, to develop positive qualities at a minimum, but in the deeper sense, we could use a life like this to achieve liberation from cyclic existence, to achieve nirvana, the goal of the Buddha's lesser vehicle path. Or, as he suggested to those with intelligence, not to be satisfied with that alone, but to strive for full omniscience. Out of a warmth toward other sentient beings, opening our vista beyond ourself and our own sufferings to the suffering of all other sentient beings. Who've been our mother numerous times, who've been kind depthlessly, who are exactly equal to us in wanting to be happy, be free of suffering, equal with us in having the ability, because they all have this Buddha nature, both the conventional and ultimate Buddha natures. There's no one who doesn't deserve enlightenment. He doesn't deserve that. Everyone deserves, we're all equal in deserving to find ultimate enlightenment. With that thought in mind, how can we achieve a state of enlightenment in which we can effortlessly, spontaneously, and without error lead sentient beings out of their present state of suffering and samsara into not only liberation, but full enlightenment? To do that, we ourselves have to become enlightened. It's not as though we can take them to this exalted state without knowing, without experiencing that state ourselves. To do so, we need to accumulate the two collections of merit and wisdom. Merit mainly virtuous karmas, virtuous actions, virtuous states of mind that become a cooperative cause for achieving the bodies of a Buddha, the physical bodies of the Buddha, the Rupakaya, which has two variations, the Nirmanakaya and the Sambhogakaya. And we need to accumulate the collection of wisdom, which mainly means the deep understanding through meditation on emptiness as a counterpart to the conventional knowledge of virtuous karma and so forth. Although both are infinitely deep and profound, we may think we know more about karma than we actually do, but we have to admit we know very little about emptiness, have very little experience of it. So in order to accumulate that collection of wisdom, we have to seek out the teachings of the Buddha in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which were explained by Nagarjuna in his Fundamental Wisdom, especially, and expounded on by Chandrakirti in his Madhyamaka Avatara, both the root verses and his commentary to that, the Bhasham. Reading them alone at this time, so distant from the time they were taught, very, very difficult to discern what's meant. So Lama Tsongkhapa wrote a commentary illuminating the intention of those teachings, the Gompa that we're studying. And we're discussing and hearing it and thinking about it at this present time, 21st century, even separated from Lama Tsongkhapa by many hundreds of years. To better understand how to accumulate the collection of merit and the collection of wisdom. So think that's the reason I'm going to be participating this morning. Ultimate aim is to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. And listening to the teachings to accumulate the collection of merit and wisdom, which are cooperative causes of that. I'm going to participate in order to achieve enlightenment. Not just for myself alone, but primarily for the sake of sentient beings. And as a byproduct, I achieve enlightenment, which is the ultimate rangdong. We say in Tibetan, rang means self, dun means goal or interest or purpose. For the sake of all mother sentient beings, I'm going to participate in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay. Yeah. So, is that a good motivation? How are we doing? Hello, Doris. Doris has popped in. So our dear Doris sends her greetings. Our dear friend, Venerable Shanka, will have a special moment this coming Tuesday. He will take ordination as a bhikshu. Where, Don? I think San Jose, is it?
Yes, I believe so.
In San Jose, California, along with the monk from Thupten Norbu Ling, who is also flying in. They'll take Gelong ordination. They'll be Dharma brothers. Usually, when if they're just a few monks, the actual time of you taking ordination is determined by your age. So I think Shanka will probably be senior monk at that time when he takes that. So that's kind of exciting. So how are we doing? Anyone have any observations about our meditations, our motivation, or questions either about the material we've just covered or any other things that have been stuck in your craw, as an expression. I like so. It's probably not very pleasant to have something stuck in your craw, but for some reason that expression sort of tickles me. Nadine, do you have any Dharma itches?
Well, thank you very much, George. Last meditation you mentioned the big bus the big bus where for all the sentient beings, even those we don't like at all. And today I was reciting the Prajnaparamita Sutra which you sent me, and there is one piece in it which really describes this big bus. It's so I will send it to you. It's so
Yeah.
amazing. Like, exactly the big bus is mentioned there.
So is it short enough that you can read to us right now, or is it too long?
I don't know. It would take maybe 3 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'll wait for you to send it. Yeah. So if you're interested, I think what Nadine is referring to was the condensed uh,
I
sutra.
put it in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you. I think what she's referring to is the condensed sutra.
8,000 lines.
Okay, I don't see it yet. Maybe it'll come up there in a second. Um, Remember when we talked about the three mothers, they called it the 100,000 verse, the 25,000 verse, and the 8,000 verse Prajnaparamita Sutras, which are just longer and more abbreviated versions of the same discourse that the Buddha gave on Vulture's Peak outside of Rajagriha in India, many, 2,500 or so years ago. Um, did you post it already, Nadine? Or you're about to post it?
I
Okay.
posted it. Yes, it's very short.
I don't see it in the chat. Am I not?
No,
Does anyone else see it? You see it, Louise? Where is it? Oh, I see. I had to press on something there. Subhuti, yeah. Let me read. Subhuti was the interrogator of the Buddha at this time. The Lord speaks of the great vehicle, the Mahayana, surpassing the world with its gods, men, asuras. That means when we talk about the devas and the asuras, the gods and the anti-gods, that vehicle will go forth, for it is the same as space and exceedingly great. As in space, so in this vehicle there is room for immeasurable and incalculable beings. Yeah, the big bus. So is this the great vehicle of the bodhisattvas, the great beings? So is this great vehicle of the bodhisattvas, great beings, as a positive statement. One cannot see its coming or going, and its abiding does not exist. I mean, does not inherently exist. It does abide conventionally. Thus, one cannot get at the beginning of this great vehicle, this Mahayana, nor at its end, nor at its middle. But it is self-identical everywhere. Therefore, one speaks of the great vehicle. Okay, maybe that's the whole 8,000 verse sutra that you're referring to, not just the condensed version. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, great. A great vehicle. Yeah. So I've been thinking myself, uh, if one is really like the Kadampa Geshe is always trying to practice the Lojong, uh, rather than letting one's mind daydream about things you'd like to happen in the future. Like when I go to bed at night, sometime I would think, oh, in the future I'd like to be this. I'd like to know how to play the piano, make music to bring joy to people, or to I hate to admit it, to be a great tennis star. Or more virtuously to be a doctor, where I would have all of the talents, to like the Tibetans, to read the pulse and to know the person's disposition from their irises and so forth and so on. But just realizing if one were to daydream like that, to what to wish for in a future life, one has to think how wonderful it would be to come back as a bodhisattva and from a very young age, like the reincarnation of Geshe Zopa, who's just been installed at Deer Park, who was present there. And there's a very beautiful picture of him on the throne at the end of a couple, I think it was a couple hours, maybe not a couple of hours, but a long time for a little boy. And he's holding a Rubik cube while the people are saying prayers and so forth. I thought it was very cute. To come back like that, and from a very young age to have all of the conditions to practice the Dharma, to hear it and have faith, and to be able to actualize these thoughts of the Lojong, let's say the eight verses of training the mind. In order to do that, you have to try to actualize them now, again and again, as I said before, through familiarity, through repetition, or familiarity through concentration. So that's my observation, admonition to myself, try to be more mindful of that. Okay. So, yeah. Richard, do you have any no Dharma itches? Mikhail? No? Okay. So let's see
Actually,
yeah, go on.
maybe there is something I just realized about the Chittamatra view. So the object of negation is something being a different substance from the mind apprehending it.
Right.
But that concerns only...
Yeah, when they say the object of negation, so from the Chittamatra point of view, they do use the word emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're talking about the wisdom side when we talk about wisdom and merit. And their object of negation is not true existence or inherent existence. In fact, they even accept inherent existence of the mind. But as you say, their object of refutation is refuting that the subject mind and the object that it's perceiving are different, are separated from one another, are different substances. Yeah.
But that concerns only compounded phenomena, right?
Why is that? What about space? Can't you meditate on the fact?
Physical space, of course, but uncompounded space, that's... Are they refuting that there is a body size?
So remember, when you talk about the senses, when you talk about the eye consciousness and let's say a blue flower, their contention is that the blue flower, the object of the blue flower, appears to be an external object to the mind, but it is actually arisen at the same time as the arisal of the mind perceiving it. They are simultaneous, coming from the same seed, right? When you talk about something that's uncompounded, and so we're limited here of what's considered to be uncompounded, usually we say space and the two cessations are the uncompounded, like in the Abhidharma Kosha, right?
Yeah, but I'm thinking more specifically about, for example, the meaning generality, the appearing object of conception.
Yeah. Then?
Nobody, nobody posits that as external, or?
Say again?
Nobody posits that as external, or?
Well, it does seem like there's a duality between the consciousness that's perceiving it and the object, right? So that duality, yeah, in the case of a blue flower or the trees outside or the fences or something, yeah, you would say that seems to be an external object. Here, when you talk about uncompounded space, usually uncompounded space has to have a substratum. What is that? What is that substratum?
I'm not sure,
Emptiness?
but no, I'm not sure what you mean.
So, say for instance, the intermediate space that we can see is what is the substratum for understanding uncompounded space.
I see what you mean.
Uncompounded
Yeah.
space doesn't just sort of exist in a vacuum, sort of like that. So you can infer the existence of uncompounded space through various observations, and then that apprehension of uncompounded space is something that your mental consciousness alone perceives, right? It's not perceived by your eye consciousness. Okay, so think about that for a while, and we'll come back to that. Had someone else, besides Louise, was there someone else that had raised their hand? Yeah, Rachel, had you said something?
I raised my hand and then I lowered it. Yeah, I think if I will feel quite foolish, I think, but it was basically, what's the difference between arising simultaneously in the Chittamatra and the need to have both the three factors of mind, consciousness, sense object, and object, sensory faculty. You know, what's the real difference between that they arise simultaneously and that you need them in order to
Well,
have
from
consciousness?
usually we would say that a consciousness arises as a result of perceiving an object. So first there's the object, and as a result of that, subsequently there is the cognition of that object, right? Let's say from the Sautrantika point of view, the Chittamatra are saying that they arise simultaneously, that they are not, the consciousness does not arise as an effect of the object. Their relationship is not a causal relationship. Say the blue flower and the consciousness perceiving it are not causally related. So if they're not causally related, but they're still related, what relationship is left?
Same nature.
Yeah, natural relationship, right? So two things that are naturally related can arise simultaneously, but all of the Buddhist schools, most of the Buddhist schools, other than Chittamatra, say that consciousness and its objects are causally related. So they can't be simultaneous. One has to precede the other, just the way you can't have, yeah. We talked about this in other situations like fire and smoke. So the fire has to precede the smoke that it produces, even though when the smoke is produced, there might be a new smoke continuity of the fire producing more smoke in the next instant. Leaving off that, the fire always has to precede the smoke, which is its effect, right? Okay, Paul, what do you think?
You know, it all sounds right to me. I actually had, yeah, no, I actually had a question that, I mean, it's very tangential, and so feel free to pass on it. But I, you remember when I was living with Geshe Tondo, you used to visit, and
Yeah.
on one occasion we showed him a movie about the Apollo missions to the moon.
Oh, yeah.
And he was asking why it took so long, and I said, well, you know, they have to leave the atmosphere and then get to the moon. And he said, well, what's in between them? And I said, well, there's nothing. There's just uncompounded space. And he said, no, that's not possible. Right. And just, I know you have a physics background. I was just curious, how would you answer that question? What, if it's not uncompounded space, if outer space is not uncompounded space, what is it?
Well, it's the what do we say? The Barnangi Namga, the intermediate space, right? That we perceive. So, usually when we talk about space, that's related with a little with the Mikhail's question,
Right.
saying what, uncompounded space is based upon the compounded space,
Right.
which is what's called Barnang. Barnang means intermediate,
Right. Right.
appearing between Barnang, I think.
Yeah.
So on the basis of that, one can understand mentally, with the mental consciousness, that there is the absence of obstructing contact if you that space lacks obstructive contact,
Right.
like that. So I would think the answer would be that there's intermediate space there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Not sure, but you're a physicist also. Okay. So we've reached the point now in our text, the next outline in Thupten Jinpa's translation on page 318, and in the FPMT version 178, in the Tibetan says Nipani. So this is the outline that was first was refuting the intrinsic existence of potentiality in present consciousness, present cognition, that we just finished. Now, refuting the intrinsic existence of potentiality in future cognition. So what are we doing here? So the Chittamatra, let's go back to the outline right here. We had the last outline said refuting that position. This has three parts: refuting the intrinsic existence of potentiality in the present, refuting the intrinsic existence of potentiality in future cognition, refuting the intrinsic existence of potentiality in past cognition. This was after having stated the opponent's position that cognitions of external reality arise or do not arise from the maturation or the lack of maturation of this potential. That's the Chittamatra position. So now we're in the process of having first gone over the refutation of the ripening of potential for present cognition, now refuting the intrinsic existence of potentiality in future cognition. So let's read this 1.5 stanzas here, the way that Thupten Jinpa has put it in Venerable Jones' translation in the FPMT. She separates the stanzas differently in juxtaposition with the commentary to them. Jinpa just tosses them all out here first. So it says, without the qualifier, there can be no qualified. Okay. What does that mean? What is that? In the Tibetan, it says, Kepar mepar, Kepar chen yo min. So Kepar is, Kepar, usually we say that which qualifies or that which is, specifies. Without the qualifier, there can be no qualified. Otherwise, even a barren woman's son could have such potential. Yeah, so that's why Chandrakirti wrote his Bhasham to explain what he meant in the Karikas. So the Karikas are very, very succinct and, without some commentary, difficult to understand. then he continues on with the next stanza, which comes, the explanation of which comes out a little bit later. Those two lines were the last two lines of stanza 57. Then if you speak of potentiality, remember when we talked about nupa, can mean potency or potentiality. Basically, it's talking about the seed in the consciousness. If you speak about potentiality because consciousness will emerge, that means if consciousness will emerge, it's talking about a future consciousness, future cognition. If you speak of potentiality because consciousness will emerge, there will be no cognition since there is now no potential. Okay, why does he say that? Then he has in quotes, things that exist through mutual dependence have no true existence, end quote. So the sublime ones have taught. Or they, yeah. What is it the Tibetans say? Dampa namgi sung. So dampa means, when we talk about the holy dharma or the holy guru, we say, Lama dampa means a holy guru or sublime guru. How did Jimpa translate the sublime ones? It's referring to the teachings of the Buddha. All right. So just in case you missed there, yeah, the picture that oh yeah, I think Louise posted a picture of Geshe Zopa in the chat. Geshe Zopa's reincarnation. That's not the latest one that I got this morning, I think, from my friend Bob Gore there, that clearly shows he's holding a Rubik cube.
That's Rachel's posting.
You can see the different colors. Anyway, I'll leave that. Okay, so this is the Karaka. These are the Karakas in question. Now, Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary to that, Jimpa's translation says, now, if you contend that, he has in brackets, now if the potentiality exists in the not yet arisen cognition, that's a little bit, his translation there is a little bit problematic for me. Venerable Jones says, if there existed a potentiality for an unproduced consciousness. If we change Jimpa's translation there, now if you contend that the potential, there exists a potentiality for the not yet arisen cognition, does that fit with your mind a little bit better? Not sure. Anyway, so we're talking about we're trying to argue with the Chittamatra because they're contending, their supposition is that this potentiality for a consciousness, there will exist one for a future cognition, a not yet arisen cognition. If you were to say that, there is the following analysis. We're going to analyze this way. When we relate the two terms in the phrase potentiality of cognition, Nampa shepe nupa, yeah, the potentiality of cognition. Potentiality is the qualified and cognition itself is the qualifier. What does that mean? Potentiality is the qualified and cognition is a qualifier. So we say Khapa shi and Khapa chu or kechu. So when we talk about different things like the color of the tree, so the tree is what is the color is what is qualifying the basis, the tree, right? The tree is the Khapa shi, is that which is qualified, and the color is the qualifier. It's qualifying what kind of quality of the tree. So here it says, when we relate the two terms in the phrase potentiality of cognition, potentiality or the seed is that which is being qualified, and the cognition is the qualifier. Sounds strange, huh? However, when it comes to the future or not yet arisen cognition, one cannot characterize it in positive terms as cognition. Why not? Because it hasn't arisen yet, right? Nor can it be characterized in negative terms as non-cognition, in the sense of something with intrinsic existence. Furthermore, since future cognition does not exist in the present as cognition, I think we can all agree with that, right? Future cognition does not exist in the present as cognition. How can one qualify such potentiality in terms of this potentiality of this cognition? Good question. Lama Tsong says this is not possible. So without the qualifier, what's the qualifier in this case? The cognition. So without the qualifier, comma, the cognition, comma, there can be no qualified, the potentiality. In other words, whatever you have there, whether it be a seed or whatever, you can't call it the potential of the cognition if the cognition doesn't exist at this point. Well, you can talk about it relatively. You can talk about it conventionally, but not in the sense that Chittamatra is talking about it intrinsically. Lama Tsong continues, otherwise there would be the consequence that even a barren woman's son could have such potential. Exclamation mark. Okay, let's see if we can unpack that a little bit. So, so the FPMT translation, Venerable Jones translation says, if there existed a potential for an unproduced consciousness, to me that's more clear, when the potential of a consciousness is joined to it, or in other words, when you make this compound potential of a consciousness or a consciousness's potential, the potential would be the basis of qualification. That's the basis. And the consciousness would be the qualifying phenomenon. Make sense so far? A future unproduced consciousness cannot be indicated to be an affirmative entity saying consciousness. Is that something profound? A future unproduced consciousness cannot be indicated to be an affirmative, a positive entity saying consciousness. So when we talk about entities, we can talk about, with phenomena, we divide it up in many different ways, like the pizza, right? We can slice it in different ways. So one way is talking about positive phenomena and negative phenomena. So a future unproduced consciousness cannot be indicated to be a positive phenomena, an affirmative entity saying consciousness, because it doesn't exist yet. Make sense? Yeah. And it cannot be indicated to be an inherently existent negative entity, saying non-consciousness. Okay, so what the implication of that maybe become clear when we talk about it a little more. Since a future consciousness does not exist as a consciousness in the present, this is the FPMT translation of what we just read. Since a future consciousness does not exist as a consciousness in the present, in terms of stating this potential is the potential of that consciousness, by what is the potential qualified? So the potential is the basis, and it's being qualified by the potential of consciousness, of cognition. So if it doesn't exist if the future consciousness does not exist as a consciousness in the present, in terms of stating this potential is the potential of that consciousness, by what is the potential qualified? It is not. It's not qualified because you don't have a consciousness that you can refer to that is qualifying it. If that is the case, without the qualification, quote, consciousness, unquote, the potential that is qualified by it does not exist. If that is not the case, it would follow that a potential exists even for the son of a barren woman. Okay, so yeah. Up till that last sentence, maybe relatively clear. What does the last sentence mean? If that is the case, it would follow that the potential exists even for the son of a barren woman. Now, last week or the week before, I think Richard was able to ferret out what everyone else was sort of like in the Rodin's thinker mode, thinking, what does that mean? Do you have an idea what that means?
I think it has to do with causality. I would, the way I'm thinking of it is in terms of causality, that that if you don't have if you have if it was the case that if it's the case that you would have a potential for every cause, if cause had potential in it inherently, then there'd be a cause of a barren of the son of a barren woman, because that would be in effect. There'd have to be a cause. There'd have to be a potential for that cause. That's how I'm understanding it.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? I mean,
but here it's not so much that the potential and the cause are different. The potential is the cause of the cognition. So if you were to have if you were to have a potential for something that doesn't yet exist, say like the future cognition,
right?
Then why couldn't you have the potential for the son of a barren woman? Because that also does not exist.
Right. That's clearer. Yeah, that's clearer than
let me read, and I will try. Yeah, Geshe Zopa had some comments on this. So even though it's sometimes a little bit wordy, and one has to read between the lines of Geshe-la's English, Geshe-la always would say to us, don't trust my English, something like this. At other times, when I would debate with him about the meaning of some word, he would demand that his English was right. But anyway, so Geshe-la said in this case, if a potential exists for an unproduced consciousness, if, quote, the potential of the consciousness, unquote, is if you make that kind of composition, the jorwa, if you join them that way, the potential of the consciousness, the potential is the basis of qualities, and the consciousness is the quality, right? That's the same as what we're saying. The seed, the potential, comes first. At that time, consciousness is yet to come. It has not yet come. It is yet, is in the future. It has not yet come. If the potential of something exists at that time, that consciousness, which has not arisen right now, then he said, this is kind of complicated. So again, we can feel a little bit, some solace whenever Geshe-la says something is complicated, because many of the things that we find complicated, Geshe-la said was very easy. So when he says something is complicated, there are maybe even other implications beyond what we ourselves can get at right now. But anyway, okay. So he says, this is kind of complicated. So he continues to explain. When you say seed of consciousness or potential of consciousness, right? One is the attribute or qualification, the kechu, and one is the kepa-gishi, the keshi, the basis of attributes or the substratum. Yeah, like we were talking about earlier, uncompounded space and compounded space and so forth. The quality and the base of that quality. Geshe says, maybe you can say subject and predicate. But in order, well, he said, like a tree's color or the shape of the tree or something like that. One is the quality, the attribute. The other is the subject. That's what he's using subject here to mean the basis of that attribute. What is wrong if you say the consciousness of the potential, the nampe namshe, the potential's consciousness? There, if you say that, a future unproduced consciousness cannot be indicated as a positive entity called consciousness. That's another way of saying what was said before. Just adding an extra word there becomes a little more clear. You can't say that. There, a future unproduced consciousness cannot be indicated as a positive entity called consciousness. It cannot be indicated as an inherently existent negative entity, saying is not consciousness. So this was a little bit problematic thing about before when he says, Geshe-la is adding here the words inherently existent. It cannot be indicated as an inherently existent negative entity, saying it is not consciousness. Consciousness is yet to come. It is not yet arisen. It will come in the future, but not right now. How can you say the future consciousness itself, which is the possessor of the potential, is inherently existent? That's the Chittamatra position, that consciousness is inherently existent. Is this future consciousness a consciousness? Excuse me, let me hydrate here a little. I remember seeing some years ago when Steve Jobs would give his presentations, these big Apple things, and the other people that would come on to help him, they all had, water bottles, and they were all hydrating every couple of minutes. I think it became vogue in Silicon Valley to hydrate. Thank you, Rachel. Good example. You're hydrating there. I have particular need to hydrate. So Geshe-la says, positively, you cannot say that is a consciousness, a future consciousness. You can't say that it is a consciousness because it is inherently not a consciousness, because it isn't inherently not risen. Inherently, it has not yet come. Relatively, that is to say, conventionally, you can say it has not yet come. It has not come yet. You can say that conventionally, but if it is, if you say that it is inherently not come, which is the Chittamatra position, it will never come because it will absolutely not come. If something if something were to be, and I'll use the word were to be because nothing can be inherently existent, but if it were to be inherently existent, where is it? But if it were inherently, if it were to be inherently not to come, it will never come because it will absolutely not come. In the same way, if something is past, absolutely past, if you say that it is inherently past, then completely every aspect is stopped and there is nothing. There's no consequence of that any longer. It can't have any kind of effect. So therefore, in the future, speaking relatively, speaking conventionally, this is yet to come. It has not yet come, but will be coming. You can say that conventionally, in a relative sense, in a conventional sense, in a dependent situation you can have. But for the inherent situation, you cannot say this is the future consciousness, that which is not yet come. Not yet come, in this case, you would mean inherently it has not come. Absolutely it has not come. So you cannot say this consciousness is a positive entity. You cannot say that positively. You follow it? Making sense? Then Geshe-la continued, if that is coming in the future, if it is yet to come, if it is not yet consciousness, you also cannot say it is not consciousness. This is the second part. So he's going to explain. You can also cannot say it is not consciousness. Why not? If you say it is not consciousness in a negative way, inherently, if it is inherently not consciousness, that means not one time, but absolutely. That means it could never be consciousness in the future. If it is inherently not consciousness, then it will never become consciousness at all. So Geshe-la is adding in here the implication that Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't specify explicitly the need to in this context, what's being talked about is in the Chittamatra position of talking about inherently existent consciousness. If it is inherently not consciousness, then it will never become consciousness at all. You couldn't have the arisal of something in the future. So, absolute kind of thing. That is the main point here. Inherent kind of negative way you cannot show. You cannot say that it is inherently not consciousness. Relatively, conventionally, right now, it's not consciousness, but it will be consciousness sometime in a dependent sense, relative cause and effect. That way you can say So here, the main point that's being made is that this is talking about an inherent existing situation. Making sense? And a little bit, a little bit complicated. What do you have there, Don? Is that your
cat.
Oh, your cat? Oh, I
My
thought.
cat wants to listen to the Dharma.
Oh, okay, that's good. I thought that was your water bottle. Okay. So without the qualifier cognition, there could be no qualified. The potentiality. Otherwise, there would be the consequence that even a barren woman's son could have such a potential. Okay. So let's continue. Yeah, Richard.
Just a very, it's probably not an important question, but why use the terms qualifier and qualified in the first place? Is there any particular subtlety or nuance to using those terms as opposed to consciousness and cognition?
Right. Well, so first of all, you could opt out and say that's what that's what Chandrakirti said in his Majjhimavatara Bhasham. Okay, so you could put the burden on him. I remember, although there's an answer, I'm just joking a little first. Geshe Tekchok used to say when we would ask sometimes, let's say, why did Chandrakirti say that? And Geshe would say, you have to ask Chandrakirti. So anyway, generally speaking, when you talk about a potential, it's the potential of something. So when you have that kind of composition or juxtaposition of words, potential of consciousness, you have a situation where the potential is being qualified by the consciousness. So that's just another way of saying that. So Louise is reminding that we'll take a break. So let me just read this next little section, and then we can go over it afterwards. Jimba's translation says, thinking of a specific cognition that may emerge from its potentiality, right? The opponent might assert, who's the opponent? The Chittamatra. Quote, when we Chittamatrans say, this is the potentiality of this cognition, and it's from this potentiality that this cognition will emerge, the two become qualifier and qualified. For example, in worldly convention, one uses imperatives like cook the rice, right? Make the tea, clean your room, cook the rice, or another imperative, weave a cloth from this thread, or you could say, weave a garment from this yarn, right? One says this on the basis of imagining the cooked rice or the woven cloth, imagining it because it's coming in the future. Okay, so think about that. That's what that's what the Chittamatra is saying. And then they say in the treatise of Treasury of Abhidharma, also, what's that? Abhidharma Kosha, right? When the author writes, when Vasubandhu wrote, the womb born is threefold, the universal monarch and the two self-arisen ones. Okay, this is going to be interesting. He is speaking of someone entering the womb who will in the future become a universal monarch. So here too, we Chittamatrans are speaking of potentiality of cognition because we're thinking of the consciousness that will emerge. Sounds like a reasonable argument, right? Okay, so let's take a little break. Thank you. Richard and David are still. David, how did it go in Ohio? And Karen, you wrote to me that you spoke the local language and you didn't have the bumper sticker, the empathy bumper sticker on. So things went well?
Yeah, for the most part, we kind of zigzagged across Steubenville by Pittsburgh, then over to Cincinnati. So we saw a broad expanse of the Midwest there.
Are there some liberal enclaves in Ohio?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
absolutely. Just like North Carolina, right?
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But David came home with COVID just to top everything off in our lives.
Oh no. So while your collarbone is still healing, he's got COVID, so he can't help as much. You got to order in.
Yeah. And then then we found a couple of cats. Somebody left a box of cats at the Kadampa Center. So we have two of them upstairs, little kittens.
They are adorable. I'll show pictures to anybody who wants kitties. They are beautiful. They are beautiful.
And they would keep you good company, Venerable George.
Yeah. Okay. Getting more online here. So let's go back to this sentence that we read, but we didn't talk about it so much. Thinking of a specific cognition that may emerge from its potentiality, may emerge, so that means future. The opponent might assert, when we say, so that's when he has we there, I think that means Chittamatra, when we say this is the potentiality of this cognition, and it's from this potentiality that this cognition will emerge, it's talking about the same thing. The two become qualifier and qualified in the same sense that we were just talking about before. What is being qualified is the potential, and what is the qualifier is the cognition. For example, in worldly convention, one uses imperatives like cook the rice and weave a cloth from this thread on the basis of imagining the cooked rice or woven cloth. Do we do that? Make the pizza. Sean might say to his wife or his daughter, the pizza doesn't exist yet, but imagining the future pizza, you can say make the pizza or cook the rice, or even though you don't have a fabric yet or a piece of cloth from the what's it called? The thing that you
Loom.
Loom, thank you. Even though you don't have the piece of cloth there yet, you can say, weave a cloth from this yarn, from this thread, on the basis of imagining the cooked rice or woven cloth. In the Abhidharmakosha 2, when the author writes, the womb born is threefold, the universal monarch and the two self-arisen ones. In that case,
Why don't you close it?
say again? So in that case, Vasubandhu is speaking of someone entering the womb who will in the future become a universal monarch or will become a pratika Buddha or a full Buddha. So here too, we are speaking of potentiality of cognition because we are thinking of the consciousness that will emerge. That's their contention. So, yeah. So let's see. Does that make sense? Venerable Jones translation. Even with the glasses, I have to make the screen a little bit bigger here. She translates through thinking deeply. So I think what she's translating that way is Ningla Samne. How does Jimpa translate that, Paul? Ningla Samne. Thinking of a specific cognition that may emerge from its potentiality, the opponent might assert. So he doesn't translate that necessarily. So she says, through thinking deeply that any consciousness whatsoever is produced from a potential, such statements as this is the potential of this consciousness, and this consciousness arises from that potential, are the things that are the qualifications and the basis of qualification, just as are the things that are qualification and basis of qualification, just as in the world it is said, cook the boiled rice. She's translating the Tibetan word that Jimba just translates as rice. It says cook the boiled rice. In other words, boil the rice. And in regard to yarn, weave this bolt of cloth through thinking about the boiled rice and the woolen cloth that will arise. Okay. Making sense? So again, I'm going to read a little bit what Geshe Zopa said here because although in some ways it's clear when we discuss it, sometimes just to discuss it a little bit more in other words is helpful. Geshe said, again, on the July 13th, 2003, more than 22 years ago, if it is said, keeping in mind that the consciousness which will be produced from the potential I think that's what Venerable Joan had translated as deeply thinking or something. He says, keeping in mind that consciousness which will be produced from the potential at that time, the future consciousness is not there. The future consciousness is not yet there. But in one's thinking, that consciousness will arise later. Thinking in your mind about the potential, the seed, which will give rise in the future, give rise to the future consciousness, in that way, we Chitamatrans say you can say that. Statements such as, this is the potential of this consciousness, and this consciousness will arise from this potential. The Yogacara will say that the basis of qualities, that's the potential, right? The potential will produce that consciousness, which is its attribute. In general, of course, potential means seed. The word that's being used in this context, we're talking about potential, but it's always talking about what the Chitamatrans say is the seed or the imprint that's deposited in the alaya vijnana that will give rise to the consciousness and its object, right? The Yogacara will say that the basis of quality, this potential will produce that consciousness. In general, of course, potential means seed. From this seed, such and such a result will come in the future. Such and such alaya vijnana has some kind of seed, and consciousness will arise from that in the future. So you can talk about the potential of that consciousness because it's still thinking of consciousness in the future. This is the Chittamatra point of view. This is what we've just read. It's nothing new, but just saying it in other words. In the world, it's commonly said, cook the boiled rice, weave the cloth on this warp. I think in the French translation, Louis de Valle Poussin. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Mikhail? Or maybe
Sorry, yeah, La Vallée Poussin, yeah, right.
Le Valle. He has weave the fabric, weave the cloth. Yeah, maybe if you were to translate the French for fabric into English, it would be cloth. As it is said in the world, cook the boiled rice and weave the cloth on this warp. Having thought of the cooked rice and the fabric that will arise, and in the world statements such as, please cook the boiled rice, can be made. That boiled rice right now is not yet cooked, but you are thinking about the future cooked rice. Thus you can use such words even completely talking about the future. This is what Chittamatra Yogacara wants to say, right? Some kind of cloth made out of wool or cotton, some kind of thread or yarn or something like that. In the world, we always say things like, will you weave some cloth? I don't always say that. I know very few people who weave. I have some friends who weave, but maybe in Tibet there was more prominence of that, right? You didn't go to the store necessarily in the old days. If you needed a cloth, you would have to weave it. In the world, we always say things like, will you weave some cloth? Will you make some pudding? Will you make some pizza? Thinking of the future cloth, even though it does not exist right now. That is not necessary. It's not necessary to exist right now. In the future, the boiled rice and the fabric, you can say like that. This is a Chittamatra way of saying. Okay. So then this next sentence here. In the treasury of Abhidharma, where the author writes, the womb-born is threefold, the universal monarch, and the two self-arisen ones. So this is quite interesting, I think. So this is talking about in the third chapter, if you have a translation of Abhidharma Kosha, or a commentary, it's in the third chapter. What's the third chapter, Paul, Kosha is?
I believe that's the transitory world, the impermanent world. Isn't it the world? Is third chapter the world, I thought?
I'm not sure. It sounds good. Verse 17, and the particular line that's being quoted here is the second line of verse 17 in the third chapter. Korlo Gyurdang Rangjung Ni. Korlo Gyur means wheel turning, or chakravartan, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Dang Rangjung Ni. So Rangjung means what is it? Svayambhu. Like, the stupa in Kathmandu Valley called Swayambhunath or Swayambhu. Swayambhu means self-arisen. So Rangjung Ni. So what is self-arisen? Who are self-arisen? That's referring to the Pratika Buddhas and the fully enlightened Buddhas. So how are they self-arisen? It doesn't. What it means is they don't have to depend on something else to achieve their enlightenment. So let me read here. The whole verse, the verse 17 says in the Tibetan, three entered the womb, the Chakravartin and the two self-arisen. That's the line that we were just talking about. Respectively, because of extensive actions, wisdom, and both. So this is commentary. That's the last two lines of verse 17. So that will give a little more sense of what this is talking about. So one who is born in a mother's womb, who enters the mother's womb, has three different things. This is Geshe Sopa's commentary on that. There are there are two uses of the word three here. There are three kinds of beings that are being talked about. You're talking about the Chakravartins. You know what Chakravartins are, right? Chakravartin emperors are very special sentient beings that are born in the world and to become a universal monarch, either of one continent or of two continents or three continents or all four continents. There are different names for the different varieties of Chakravartins. And we talk about it many times. Every time you make a prostration to the Buddha, you create the karma to become a Chakravartin emperor as many times as there are atoms under your body. So that's quite a praise to the power of prostration, because to become a Chakravartin emperor is very rare and has all sorts of amazing qualities and everything, right? So he said, so there's two ways that the word three is being talked about here. There's three kinds of beings that are talked about entering the mother's womb. We also enter our mother's wombs, right? Even if we're not a Chakravartin or a Pratika Buddha or a Buddha. But so there's the word three is referring to those three, but also three kinds of attributes. Entering, abiding, and emerging. So say, for instance, the Chakravartin, some know the entering time. Some know when it is coming out, when it is emerging from the womb. Some know entering, the time of entering, that they're going to enter the womb, but they don't know when they are coming out. Somebody maybe like us, ordinary beings, we don't know when we're entering or when we're coming out. We don't have any idea. Okay, getting the picture here? So the Chakravartin king or emperor is aware only of entering the womb, not of remaining there or of emerging. So it has the being who's going to take rebirth as a Chakravartin knows that they're going to enter into the womb of a mother, but they don't know how long they're going to abide in the womb, nor when they're going to come out. The Pratyeka Buddha, self-arisen one, is aware of entering the womb and also remaining there, but doesn't know when it is going to come out. So this is more deeper understanding than the Chakravartin. The fully completed Buddha is aware of entering, remaining, and also emerging. So that kind of future, entering into the mother's womb, the Abhidharmakosha says that the Chakravartin kings and the two self-arisen, that means the Pratyeka Buddhas and the Buddhists, some of them already understand when it is entering, when they are entering, and when they are coming out. Some do not know anything. Some know. There are these three types of entering. So all of them are talking about the future. That's the context of why Lama Tsongkhapa, why Chandrakirti quoted that verse. I think that's in the Rangdel. I'm not absolutely certain. Do you know, Mikhail or Paul?
Which is in the Rangdel?
This verse from this one line from the Abhidharmakosha.
Oh, you mean Chandrakirti's Rangdel? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't know.
Not sure. I'll have to check. So finally, Geshe-la said, And so the commentary said, as said, a cause to become a Chakravartin, etc., enters into the womb. Later, it becomes that boy, first entering the mother's womb, then coming out, and then later, when grown up, one becomes a Chakravartin king. Some spiritual ones, so the Chakravartin must be somewhat spiritual because they created virtuous karma to become a Chakravartin, but more spiritually inclined, such as the Pratika Buddhas and the Buddhas, some spiritual ones would become self-arisen Pratika Buddha or become Buddha. So those are talking about the future. These three entering into the mother's womb. Okay, so that's a little bit of the context there. So Thupten Jinpa's comment there, 579, all he does is he refers to, yeah, he does say it's cited in Chandrakirti's commentary. So is that possible? Did Vasubandhu live after Chandrakirti? I think we asked this a couple of weeks ago. No, he came quite a bit before Chandrakirti. So Chandrakirti was aware of his writings and quoted him. So that note 579 answered my qualm earlier, whether that was in the Abhidharma, whether that was in the Madhyamakavatara's auto commentary. So Jinpa's translation says, when Vasubandhu says that the womb-born is threefold, the universal monarch and the two self-arisen ones, he is speaking of someone entering the womb who will in the future become a universal monarch. This is Chittamatra trying to, trying to verify their position. This is, even though the universal monarch is not yet there, they're thinking about someone who will become a universal monarch. So here too, we speak of potentiality of cognition because we are thinking of the consciousness that will emerge. So how are we doing? Making sense? In one sense, doesn't seem that hard, right? Richard, you never find these hard. Some others like me.
This one's a little tricky for me, frankly.
Okay.
But I'll read it over again.
Okay. So in that light, I'm going to read what Geshe, some more comment that Geshe Sopa made at this point. So Geshe was commenting on, quote, like explaining those as entering the womb, the potentiality of consciousness is accepted as an expression having thought of the consciousness that will arise. So that's the Chittamatra position. So Geshe said, these three, the Chakravartin, the Pratika Buddha, and the fully enlightened Buddha, are explained to enter the mother's womb, thinking that in the future, after entering the mother's womb, they become a Chakravartin king, they become a Pratika Buddha, or a fully enlightened Buddha. You can say those things, cause and effect, attribute, etc., talking the connection with that future entity. So even the consciousness has not yet come, the Chittamatra wants to argue, and they, there's some validity to that. We can talk about the potential ability or seed of that consciousness. This is the Yogacara view. The only problem with that is that because of their supposition or their contention that consciousness is inherently existent, is truly existent, you can't really talk about the future consciousness, just as we talked about earlier. Geshe continued, excuse me. In general, of course, yes, the answer looks all right if you ignore inherent nature, inherent existence. Thinking of the future consciousness, we speak of the potential of consciousness, sometimes thinking of the past, sometimes thinking of the future, sometimes thinking of the present when we were talking about potential. Remember, we had to refute the potential giving rise to a present cognition, giving rise to a past cognition, giving rise to a future cognition. We're on the future cognition right now. Sometimes the present. Taking all these relatively, or in the conventional sense, you can talk about everything. It's completely legitimate. But you cannot do those things once you have a situation of inherent existence. Once once something is inherently non-existent, it is then completely non-existent. Once inherently past, completely past. Once something is inherently past, it is completely past. Okay, does it make sense so far? Maybe a little bit clearer. Okay, so Prasangika responds to this. So Jimpa's translation is to the, right straight to the heart. This rejoinder too is pointless. If something does have existence on occasion, then at some point in time, such an effect will come into being. What does that mean? If something does have existence on occasion, then at some point in time, such an effect will come into being. Venerable Jones said, So this is, in Venerable Jones' translation, this particular sentence is in response to commenting on the second line of stanza 58, 658b, which read in her translation, there does not exist the arisal of that without a potential. So her translation says, furthermore, that is without essence, which Chimpa says, that's pointless. What do you say? It's pointless. If something will become existent at some time, I think that's what Chimpa is translated as occasional. If something will become existent at some time, that result would arise now. That which is always definite to not arise at any time, such as the son of a barren woman and so forth, and uncompounded space and so forth, do not arise ever, now or later. This is the Prasangika response. Hi, John. Good to see you. We're going to talk about Sanskrit in a second. So good you just came in. You and Paul are our Sanskritists. Like Diana is our etymologist, and Doris is our anthologist. Everyone has some special help. So Geshe Zopa said in this case, his translation, his commentary says, saying this is also nonsense. There's no essence. Yeah, it's nonsense. This makes no sense. Why? That is, why is Prasangika saying what Chittamatra just said about the Chakravartin king enters the womb, thinking about the future Chakravartin king, because when entering the womb, it's not yet a Chakravartin king and so forth. This makes no sense. Why? If it appears sometimes in some places, it is relative, dependent on causes and conditions, right? So if it's occasional or appears only in certain circumstances, that can't be inherently existent because it's dependent on causes and conditions. Certain things may arise in some places and not in others. right? Well, you could talk about that. You can have what is it? Sugar cane in hot areas, warm areas, but it's very difficult to grow good tasting sugar cane up north where it's cold, right? Or in the Arctic. So they can depend on places. Certain things may rise in some places and not in others. If that kind of situation, relative sense, you can say that kind of result. Let me make this bigger so I don't have to bend over so much. Otherwise, you miss my face as I'm going to. Certain things may rise in some places and not in others. In that kind of situation, relative sense, you can say that kind of result can arise at that time, in the future, relatively, conventionally. Although not existent right now, that time exists. Sometimes talking next year or sometimes many years after or something like that. For instance, you can talk about the arisal of an effect of karma many eons from now, but always talking about the situation in the Prasangika sense of conventional existence, not in terms of inherent existence. All these things are relative, dependent. They sometimes rise here and do not arise in other places. Winter and summer, something might arise in the winter. Certain kinds of things grow in the winter or mature in the winter when it's colder. Sometimes in the summer. Where are we? Winter and summer. And season, different places. Those are completely relative, dependent, cause and condition and season. All of these are dependent nature. Based on that, you can talk about all these things. But once you accept an absolute sense, an inherent existence, this will not be possible. If it is that which is definite to not arise at any time, what would that be? Well, let's say the son of a barren woman or so forth. If it is that which is definite not to arise at any time, if future consciousness is inherently non-existent right now, that means it will never exist, like a rabbit horn or like permanent space, like the son of a barren woman. It will exist forever. It will either never exist, like a rabbit horn or the son of a barren woman, or alternately, like permanent space, it will exist forever because it is permanent. Definitely, any time not coming, if something does not come at any time, it will never arise at any time. That is like the son of a barren woman or a permanent thing. It will not arise from any cause or condition. It will never arise at the present time, future time, or any time. They will never rise because naturally they are not that kind of rising thing. They are inherently not possible to rise. Okay. Enough of that. How are we doing? It's making some sense? So now, the next paragraph starts. In numerous instances of Madhyamaka's refutation of a sprout arising by virtue of its own characteristics, consequences like the following are leveled at the opponent. If the sprout can arise even though it does not exist at the time of the seed, right? Prasangika says, sprout can arise even though it doesn't exist at the time of the seed. If the sprout can arise even though it does not exist at the time of the seed, then such things as the horn of a rabbit too could come into being. the significance of hurling such extreme, absurd consequences. So when we talk about absurd consequences, the Tibetan term for consequences is telwa, right? So absurd consequences are called hachang telwa. Do you know what that means, Mikhail, hachang?
Hachang is like an intensifier, very, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, so like extreme, absurd. So hachang telwa means, is how they're translating is like absurd consequences. The significance of hurling such extreme, absurd consequences is this. An intrinsically existing sprout, a sprout that is inherently existent, if it lacks existence at any particular point of time, because the sprout has not yet come, if there's a time when it has not yet come, if it lacks existence at any particular point of time, it would have no existence at all at any time if it were inherently existent. If there were a time when the sprout was not existent, such as at the time of the seed, it could never exist if it was inherently existent, because an inherently existent phenomena, if it were to exist, could never change. It could never come into existence. Such a sprout would thus be indistinguishable from something with no existence whatsoever. This is the point. It's patently not the case. I can't remember what the Tibetan is right here. It is patently not the case that in general, if the sprout can arise even though it is not present at the time of the cause, then the horn of a rabbit can also come into being. That's not the case. That's only talking about inherent existence. Through this reasoning, such examples as the cooked rice are explained. For if things do come into being through their intrinsic natures, then potential things such as cooked rice would become totally non-existent. Okay. Furthermore, reading the next paragraph, perhaps you, the opponent, say that it's in relation to the potential emerging cognition that its potentiality is posited. And similarly, it is in relation to such potentiality that cognition is posited. Hence, the two things exist through mutual dependence, right? So we know about, we've talked about mutual dependence before. For instance, that mountain over there, if I'm standing on one mountain, this mountain, and I talk about that mountain over there, they exist, this mountain and that mountain exist in mutual dependence. When I'm on that mountain becomes this mountain, and this mountain becomes that mountain, right? They're only relatively existent. Something is big relative to something that's small. It's not absolutely big and so forth. So the Chittamatra is trying to say that. So President Giga says in reply, this is exactly why the sublime ones taught, the holy ones taught, so the Buddhas have taught, that cognitions have no intrinsic existence or no true existence. Because they depend on their objects and so forth. In the commentary, in Chandrakirti's auto-commentary, Chandrakirti states that relational existence, things that exist in the sense of mutual relation, like long and short, here, this mountain and that mountain, what does they say? Suri, Pari, and so on, exist as imputed constructs They're just merely imputed, right? And that they lack existence through intrinsic nature. Jimpa's note 580 is just making note of where to find that in the Rangdel, in Chandrakirti's Bhasham. Therefore, one should understand that it is not existence in general that is being negated in relation to these things. Rather, it is their intrinsic existence that is being rejected. This distinction must be understood. Okay, that makes sense. I'll put my picture up a little higher there. Makes sense so far? No one's gagging? Okay. So then he continues, Lama Tsong Khapa continues, now if you, the Chittamatra, speak in terms of relationality, you are then actually following our discourse. And the note 581 says, this last sentence is a gloss on the following concluding comment in the commentary. So that means Chandrakirti's auto-commentary. In that case, you will become a follower of our discourse. So this is, Lama Tsong Khapa is just phrasing it a different way. Now, if you, Chittamatra, speak in such terms of relationality, then you are then actually following our discourse. In short, such potentiality does not exist even in the future cognition. Okay. So I'm going to introduce this next section, and we'll talk about it a little, and then we will end with some heartfelt dedications of merit and accumulation of wisdom we've accumulated today. So the next section is called Refuting the Intrinsic Existence of Potentiality in Past Cognition. So we did, this is a third of those. This is in Tibetan, this says Sumbani, Tibetan outline, they always have numbers. So the first was refuting the intrinsic existence of potentiality in the present. The second was refuting it in the future. Now, refuting the intrinsic existence of potentiality in past cognition. And Jimpa's translation says, now to explain how potentiality does not exist in past cognition as well, it reads, so this is, Jimpa's putting the whole of stanza 659 right here. If consciousness arises from the maturity of potentiality already past, it will have then emerged from a potential extraneous to itself, maybe because it's inherently existent. And since the moment of this continuum, and since the moments of this continuum, remember, you have a continuity of consciousness, a continuum of consciousness, right? Which is, rather than the individual instance, is something that's imputed on the collection of parts of that consciousness. We say the continuum, right? The continuum of a stream and so forth. And since the moments of this continuum would be alien to each other, anything and everything could emerge from anything. I think this is a famous verse. So it was at this point I was going to ask for some help with the Sanskrit. I'm just going to read just these next two paragraphs and throw it out to our Sanskritists. This Jimpa's translation continues. If it is from the maturing of potentiality already past, such as a specific potentiality imprinted on foundation consciousness by by cognition as it was ceasing, a potentiality for the production of a commensurate effect that future consciousness arises, then an intrinsically distinct effect will have emerged from a potential that is intrinsically that is an intrinsically extraneous cause. Ooh, lots of vowels in there. Is an intrinsically extraneous cause. Why is this so? Lama Tsong rightly says, since the moments of this continuum emerge in a sequence, right? If you have a continuum, they manifest, let's say, in a sequence, right? Time 1, then time 2, then time 3, and so forth. The preceding and subsequent members of the continuum would, for you, Chittamatra, be alien to each other by virtue of their own intrinsic natures. Kyotar na ngachi pensungo niki tadepar yopachiro. When he says alien, he's just saying different, tade. So here's where the Sanskrit comes in. The root for the Sanskrit word for a continuum is the Sanskrit root tan. Is that right? John, do you know? Are you familiar with that?
I think the root, it's a root that means to cross. Continuum.
So the root which you make the word continuum from is tan.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word santata, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Okay, what do you think, Paul? Were you going to make a comment?
What's the word he says for it?
Just
I need to.
yeah. So I was just looking. Yeah, the root tan means something like to extend over or to. Yeah, I'm just looking at Monier Williams to spread over, to diffuse over, to extend towards, to extend over, to be contracted, continue, endure, stretch out.
Right. So what is the Sanskrit word for continuum?
It's usually tantra, right? From
I think if it's
or
referring to
samtana, I think is right.
yeah, santana, right? The mental continuum, right, is santana.
Samdana. So Lama Tsongkhapa is saying here, following Chandrakirti, the root for the Sanskrit word for continuum, which happens to be samtana, the root for that is tan. Sam is like a particle of intensification usually, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the root for the Sanskrit word for continuum is the word tan, which, as Paul pointed out and as is stated here, refers to extension or extending something. So note 583 says, these sentences with their complex analysis of the concept of continuum, as well as its associated Sanskrit term, are a word-by-word explanation of Chandrakirti's commentary. So this is exactly as it appears in Chandrakirti's Rangdel in the Bhasham. So through the formation of a continuum, causes and effects operate in a related sequence like the flow of a stream, and the continuity of birth and death remains without any intervals or disruption. Really? No intervals? Well, just the continuum is, so if you're talking about the continuum of a mind which will take rebirth or pass away, there's never a time when it's not in one of those states, right? It's living, it's in the bardo, it's dying, it's in the bardo, is dying for the bardo, takes rebirth in the next state and so forth. There is never a break in that. So I think I missed something here. The root for the Sanskrit word for a continuum is tan, means extension. As is stated, continuum refers to extend. And by applying an affix, is that the right way to pronounce it? Affix or
Yeah, affix.
affix, not affix, affix. By applying an affix, something at the end, to this verbal root, there emerges a sense of transmitting. Hence the word continuum, tantra. So I wonder if he has tantra there, but maybe that should be samtani.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
I think
Chan-
that they both will mean that.
Both will, yeah, but in this case, yeah. Okay.
Wouldn't it be the tra in tantra?
Say again?
Isn't he just using a different word, tantra, and then affixing the tra? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, that's what. So the Tibetan doesn't say the word tantra there. The Tibetan just says, what is it, gyu or gyun?
Probably gyun, right?
I would think, yeah.
Gyu, yeah.
Oh, it says gyu?
Yeah, one place
no,
gyu,
gyun,
one place gyun. Gyun
Yeah,
chapter. So
gyun.
he's just Jimpa is. So our Sanskrit has said probably was referring to the word continuum is samtani.
Or samtana, yeah, samtana.
Samtana.
You can always remember by Carlos Santana.
As opposed to that samtana. But Jimpa has chosen to translate gyun as tantra. You can also do. So I'll just read that again. So through the formation of a continuum, causes and effects operate in a related sequence like the flow of a stream, and the continuity of birth and death remains without an interval or disruption. It is just such a momentary phenomenon composed of 3 temporal stages and persisting from past to future that is called a continuum. And that note 583 says, that's where it said that's exactly from Chandrakirti's commentary. So what are the 3 temporal stages of a continuum?
Past, present, and future.
Present, future. Yeah.
Three temporal stages of a continuum. Well, is it talking about arising, abiding, and being destroyed? Or is it just talking about past, present, and future? Something to think about. So let's leave it there. We'll continue on. We'll go into some more detail about this on Monday, but certainly we will continue next Saturday. We'll go over this section right here, refuting the intrinsic existence of potentiality and past cognition. And I'm sure Paul and John are going to be diving into their Sanskrit sources to see what, I don't know if we have what Chandrakirti was actually writing, whether he wrote Samtana or whether he wrote Tantra there. Anyway.
Well, Paul posted something in the.
Yeah, that was just the root verses, though. That was just the root verse.
Okay. So before we end, how are we doing? Anyone completely flummoxed? How are you doing, Don?
I'm thinking deeply.
You're what?
Thinking deeply about this. It's
okay.
a bit entangling.
Yeah. Rachel, how's it hitting you?
It's fine. I'm sleepy.
Okay. Mikhail?
I think I'm okay. Yeah, I need full concentration, but
Yeah, we've lost a couple of people. I think Diana is left, Richard is left. Someone else is left. I can't remember.
Nadine.
Nadine is left also, yeah.
Diana is still here.
Oh, Diana's still here. Okay. Yeah, I don't see your visage there is not animated like the others, moving around. So there we go. Okay, good. So let's finish off with dedication, because we've created virtuous karma and perhaps something similar to the collection of wisdom. Defining characteristic of collection of wisdom might be actual insight into emptiness, but we've collected something similar. So due to these virtues, gewadi, nirdudag, may I quickly, nirdu, become a guru Buddha, Lama Sangye Drugyurne, and as a result, lead all migrators without exception, Droa Chikyang Maluba, into that very state, Dei Sala Gopashak. So the English translation says that enlightened state. It just says Dei Sala, into that state, into that. May I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead everyone into that state of a Guru Buddha. Then may the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not yet arisen arise and grow as a result of these virtues. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more as a result of these virtues. Then finally, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the conquerors, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang, conqueror Losang, Drakpa, Lama Khapa, spiritual father and your sons, together with your lineages, all the objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please bestow upon us now the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you, Lama Zopa, wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the conqueror's teachings and for the welfare of mother living beings, you suddenly departed to peace, at which point I lost hope. When you passed away, I was bereft. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truths of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels, triple gem, and the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, due to the power of the truth and my requests, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And then finally, for all of our teachers, present, past teachers, our primordial gurus, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, Rabjang, Sungrab, Kunla, Tawe Mik, supreme gateways for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means moved by mercy, by sewa, by illuminating spiritual friends. I make this request. So Deb, please, implication request is, in this case, please live long and stable lives. Okay, thank you very much. Also, thinking right now with all of the tumultuous events taking place in the world, to dedicate our merits that the four elements would be find equilibrium again, the consequences of climate change and earthquakes and so forth would be ameliorated, and that the minds of sentient beings in this really extreme case of degenerate age, where the delusions are rampant and so forth, and just being fired up by one another, that they might be calmed again, find some kind of equanimity and so forth. So thank you very much. Is there something I'm forgetting? Doris sometimes reminds me of something I've forgotten.
I'm not sure if you were chatting with Anna about her friend Lori having passed.
Oh, yes. I haven't chatted recently. So our class member, Anna, who's not here at the moment, did Lori just pass away?
On Tuesday, she mentioned it in a chat to me and Louise as if she had mentioned it to you. So I'm sorry if I misunderstood that.
Okay, she may have, but I've not remembered. So we may have mentioned in the last class that she and some other Dharma practitioners were reciting verses and sutras for that person who was passing away in the hospice, and she has passed away since then.
Tuesday at 6 a.m. Yeah.
Tuesday at 6 a.m. That's a little bit auspicious. Usually at dawn is when the clear light of dawn takes place, and that is said to be the best time to meditate on the clear light of death. Many of the great meditators, that's when they will enter into that clear light meditation. Rachel, did you say that there was something else you wanted to say also?
Is Gandantripa?
The Gandantipa, we mentioned in our last class, I think, or at least on Monday, that the previous Gandantipa, that means the throne holder of the Gelugpa tradition, who many of us received teachings from, has passed away at his home in his house at Sarajay. I think it was last class, because I mentioned
Monday.
Paul mentioned that he remembered that house behind my house. So to make dedications that we might encounter his reincarnations in the future, just as Geshe Zopa's reincarnation is now in the world, and we're waiting for the future when he becomes educated to receive teachings from him. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you next Saturday, some of you on Monday, hopefully many. These thorny questions of continuums and potentials. Take care.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you.